Hi guys, welcome to another Flight Deck 2 Sim tutorial. Today I'm going to introduce you to the Quick Reference Handbook, or QRH. This is the manual we use when dealing with technical problems in flight. After I've introduced it, we're going to apply it to a minor technical issue on this short flight from Ibiza to Pisa. So, here is a picture of a real QRH. This is the one we use in my company, and you notice here it's pretty similar to the one that you get with the PMDG NGX. On the front page you have something called the QAI, or Quick Action Index, and they essentially cover all the very serious checklists, very serious situations, and after you've completed any applicable memory items, you'd use the QAI to access that checklist very quickly. Into the next few pages of the QRH, you get the first few chapters. The first one, lights. They're covering any lights, master caution lights, or any other lights on this aircraft associated with any checklist. So you can see there, they're all in capital letters. The capital letter or capital lettered words means there's an associated light with the issue. Subsequently, you can see with the next chapter, unenunciated, there are things that have no lights associated with the issue. So things like ditching or fuel leaks, there is no associated light to tell us that we are ditching or having a fuel leak. So that's why that's a separate chapter. They are then combined, covering all of the non-normal checklists on the next few pages, and then you get into the bulk of the QRH, which is chapter 0 to 15, covering every technical aspect of this aircraft. On the back of the QRH, the last few pages, then we have performance in flight, which covers all the tables and charts associated with performance calculations. We have a manoeuvres section, which shows or teaches crew how to perform particular manoeuvres such as wind shear escape, approach to stall, rejected takeoff, and upset recoveries, and also all the normal flight patterns, so how to do the two-engine ILS, single-engine ILS, etc, etc. And then very importantly, on the back of the QRH we have the evacuation checklist, which isn't done by memory. Read and do that checklist from the back of the QRH. So here is a little video from the simulator about the master caution system. So anytime in flight, if there's a fault, we push the master caution recall, you get the light illuminates, you can see the air conditioning, and look, there's a pack light. We'd then get the QRH out for the pack checklist, and that would tell us how to deal with the situation. So you can see how on that video it illuminated after pushing the master caution recall. You don't always need to do that. If there is an issue, the master caution amber light will illuminate straight away. We'd then look at, try and find where it was, and then we'd reset the system and look into the QRH from there. So that is the QRH in detail, essentially. Now let's look at a minor technical issue and use the QRH to try and fix the issue. Okay, it looks like we've got a master caution, so let's imagine it's the captain who's pilot flying on this sector from Ibiza to Pisa. He would say to the first officer, state malfunction. So the first officer would look and go, alright captain, we've got master caution, air conditioning. Let's have a look on the overhead panel. We've got a bleed trip off, alright. And then he would cancel the master caution system. Now it's rearmed if we have any subsequent failures. You can see if you recall it, you still get air conditioning, bleed trip off. If I reset it, it still says bleed trip off. Alright, so the captain would then say, alright, let's have a look at the QRH for the bleed trip off non-normal checklist. He'd also say my radios, and he'd now take the communications away from pilot monitoring. So let's have a look at the bleed trip off non-normal checklist. First thing we do is confirm it's the correct checklist and then read the condition, and it says that one or more of these have occurred. We've had an engine bleed air overheat or an engine bleed air overpressure. Now, a little bit of background information. Essentially, in a nutshell, what bleed air is, it's hot air from the 5th and 9th stage compressor of each engine, and that bleed air provides pressurization and conditioned air for the cabin, and we've lost one of them, so we only have one system left. Alright, so let's have a look at the QRH. Step 1, wing anti-ice switch off. Alright, so off. Well, it already is off, so that hasn't caused the issue. That's because wing anti-ice has a huge bleed air demand. It provides de-icing and anti-icing for the leading edges of this aircraft. Step 2, trip reset switch push. The bleed trip off light will extinguish if the bleed air temperature has cooled below limits. So let's try that. No, that has still stayed illuminated. So step 3, choose one. Bleed trip off light stays illuminated, or bleed trip off light extinguishes. So you see you have here that line, you must choose an option, and you can see here, well, obviously the bleed trip off light stays illuminated. So let's read that step. Pack switch left side, because that's the one that's affected, off. This causes the operating pack to regulate to high flow in flight with flaps up and to avoid icing conditions. And you can see, look, the left duct pressure is increasing as the right pack has gone to high flow automatically to provide the required pressurization and conditioned air for the cabin. And additionally, it says avoid icing conditions, as I mentioned, and then you get these 4 black squares, which you can see here. That means it's the end of the checklist. You can then put it away. Now, there has been some updates to this QRH checklist. If you have a look here, you can see from my company there's some more information. There's a couple of notes, and it mentions here at the bottom, if the bleed cannot be reset and the aircraft is operating above flight level 250, consider descending to a lower altitude to reduce the load on the operating bleed if destination fuel requirements allow. That's because in this instance only engine number 2 is providing all the bleed pressure required for the air conditioning and pressurization, and if we've got a second bleed trip off, it's really hit the fan, to put it in perspective, excuse my language, and we need to fix the issue very, very quickly. We'd have to descend, otherwise the aircraft would depressurize very slowly. So that in essence is how we would fix the issue. Now, seeing on our flight here we're approaching the top of descent, we could consider descending to flight level 250 a little bit earlier to reduce the bleed air demand on engine number 2. And then obviously this issue hasn't been fixed. Bit of other information, we could keep trying to reset it if the pressure had dropped or the temperature had dropped below limits. You can see I've reset it, but it's still staying illuminated. So in that instance there, we would probably contact engineering, tell them we're dealing with a technical issue, and then we could see after we've landed if we can dispatch with one bleed air system using something called the MEL, the minimum equipment list. Alright, so that is it. That was a minor technical issue looking at a bleed trip off and how we use the QRH. I hope you found that interesting and learned something new. You'll be pleased to know I've created a new playlist on my channel called Non-Normal Situations. So if you have anything you'd like to look at in more detail, if you're on a type rating or something like that, we could look at that technical issue, use the QRH to try and fix the issue from there. Moving forward, we can make other situations occur too. I think a lot of people have requested engine failure, so I will create a tutorial covering that entire profile as taught during the type rating. If you haven't done so already, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. Fly safe, and I'll see you very soon for another Flight Deck 2 Sim tutorial. Take care, and bye bye.